Okay, and everyone, Glen Tony Robertson has over 40 years of experience in propulsion, holds 10 patents, and has published over 20 papers on propulsion and power generation. He's also chaired numerous professional and technical conferences and played an important role in emerging and alternative propulsion research. Tony was also a key figure in NASA's experimental replication attempt of the Podkletnov rotating superconductive gravity shield experiment, and more recently, he's been a regular attendee and presenter at the APEC Conference. Tony is far too humble to call himself a legend, so I will do it for him. Everyone, let's please welcome Tony Robertson, and let me hand it over to you, sir.
Okay. You guys want to know about the superconducting experiment that we did at NASA, but I want to give you first a history of it. Ning Li wrote that paper when she was at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. She apparently met the center director of Marshall Space Flight Center, who probably invited her to come talk to him, which she did. And she got sent down to the preliminary design office to try to get funding, and ended up in Whit Brantley's office, who eventually ended up being my boss there in preliminary design. And he called me up, and so we got together with Ning Li and decided to do a center director's discretionary fund to do an experiment that she proposed. And what she came to, the experiment she came to NASA to propose was actually to spin a superconductor about this size. It's about 3 inches high, about an inch in diameter, with about a half-inch hole, up to about 35,000 RPM. And we thought the speed was too high, so we focused the center discretionary fund on the spinning device for that. And so in 1996, we spent about a year making some of these and looking into doing a magnetic levitation spinning thing and stuff. And then at the end of the year, when we went to propose for a second year of funding, we found out about the Propulsion experiment. And so we discussed it and decided that that might be a better experiment to do, since he was only spinning it at about 5,000 RPM instead of the 35,000 RPM that he suggested. But what I wanted to point out was this device, superconductor she wanted to rotate, is actually an experiment that was proposed by Robert. Can y'all see my screen? Hey, Tim, can y'all see my screen? Let me share screen here. There we go. Can y'all see this screen? I don't hear anybody. Well, anyway, Robert Becker, the Master of Science thesis, actually proposed the experiment that Ning Li came to Marshall for. So she actually wasn't her experiment, it was somebody else's experiment. Guys, if nobody doesn't talk to me, I don't know if you guys can even hear me. But we went on to do the Podkletnov experiment instead of this experiment because of the slower speed, and spent about a half a year doing that. And then our management decided to turn it over to the science directorate. And when they went to the science directorate, they brought in a group of people from the science directorate. And this is the team that was formed from the science directorate. This is me, this is Ning Li. Ron Kozar was put in charge of the team. This is Whit Brantley, my boss at the time. This is the big superconducting disc we had built to do this 11 or 12 inch disc. There's a paper that was put together that discusses some of the stuff we were doing at the time. But we never really did much of anything. Once this team was formed, there was really no organization. there was no accountability for what we were doing whatsoever. Ning Li was charged with building the superconductor, but she never gave us the superconductor she built to even determine if they were viable for doing an experiment. Ron Kozar was off doing his own thing, making large superconductors too. I was doing off on my own thing, doing some superconductors. We all had different other jobs to do, so it was really just disorganized. David Nover did a few things. In fact, there's another second paper with Nover and Kozar on it that talks about the gravitometer, which really was useless, to be honest with you. But in the long run, we pressed superconductors, gave them to Ning Li. She supposedly fired them up. I did go to her lab once and saw some of the ones she fired, but most of them looked like they were partially in what they call the green phase, which is non-superconductive. So as far as I know, no big superconductor was ever made by Ning Li that was viable to do an experiment. And she never just wanted to prove that, so we don't know whatever. So the program ended basically in failure because of the disarray of the whole program after the science director took over. And then, so that ended in about either in the 97 or in the 98, where Ron Kozar was able to get an SBR through a company to relook at it. And they spent several years looking at it, and they had hired Podkletnov to help them design the disc and make the disc. It did make the disc, but they, in my opinion, wasted a lot of money, because once you give money to an SBR contractor, they can do anything they want to with it. Basically, they bought a Dewar for like $60,000 that was totally useless for the program. They spent a lot of money on Podkletnov, and Propulsion basically used that data to put in his other papers on the impulse experiments. Some superconductor data that's in there is actually the data that the SBR people actually did. But they ended up failing too. They ended up making a disc. They gave us a disc. They gave us a dual magnets on it and showed that it would levitate. But then the program died and nothing happened. So basically, NASA paid 2 programs about the same amount of money, and they got to the same spot, and it never got finished. So, hey, Tim, can y'all hear me?
Oh yeah, no, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I'm just hearing myself here, so I don't know if I'm talking to anybody or not.
Oh no, yeah, we're all here. We're just listening.
Okay.
I really appreciate you sharing this history with us also. I mean, because this is, I think it's incredibly valuable to have just better understanding of what NASA attempted and all of that.
And the other thing that people keep saying that Ning Li is probably in some secret laboratory. And can you see this picture that I got up?
It's still showing the NASA superconductor gravity team.
Yeah, or I'm on the left side, Ning Li's on the right side. I'm about 40 years old in this picture, and she's at least 10 to 15 years older than I am. I'm 67 now, so she's around 80 years old right now. So if she's in some secret lab doing any experiments, she's crawling around or with her cane is. But so I don't believe that she's off doing any secret stuff. I ran across a guy about 4 years ago who said that he had met Ning Li 2 years prior to that here in Huntsville. So at least 6 years ago or so, she was still here in Huntsville doing something. But as far as I know, after 2000 something, early 2000s, I never heard anything more about what she was doing. I know she got sick and went back to China for a year or so and came back. And I met her after she came back. And we talked a little bit, but she said she wasn't doing anything at that time.
Tony, if I could interject for just a second, I was going to wait on this for later because I think it was Jeremy or Mark that had told me. But so they had just found an obituary from Dr. Ning Li, and if you want, here, let me stop your screen share really quick. Okay, and let me bring this up, and then I'll do a screen share on this. Okay, and hopefully you guys can see that. So yeah, unfortunately, what it's saying is Dr. Ning Li of Huntsville, Alabama, passed peacefully on July 27th at 79 years old. She was one of the world's leading scientists in superconductivity, anti-gravity. She'd constructed the first 12-inch HTSD in the late 90s. And then it said that she's survived by her son, her grandchildren, and let me see, they have a plan for a celebration of life. And that was back. So she passed on July 27th. The celebration of life was on August 1st. So unfortunately, it looks like she's passed, and that's a tragedy because, you know, she definitely was. She had recognized expertise, and of course, we would have loved to have her on APEC as well. So let me stop sharing there. But
my guess about her age was about right. She's 79. She's almost 80. But Ning Li was an odd character to work with. She at some point in time, she would run to management and tell them to fire somebody on the team, including myself, because she would disagree with us or something. So I don't want to disrespect somebody, but she wasn't the angel that everybody thinks she was, as far as it goes. And so. But if anybody wants to know any more, I've got some of my paperwork from the Center Discretionary Funds and the SBR, but I didn't want to share them on the video because don't even know if I'm supposed to even still have them. You're supposed to kind of turn all that stuff into NASA when you retire and everything. So